this is probably not like a medical definition, but secondary infertility is when you have one living child and then you want to have a subsequent baby and there are fertility struggles. So that's definitely part of my story. It was just really difficult to, I had an almost 4-year-old. And so I was constantly getting, well, when are you going to have another baby? When are you going to get him a sibling?
Yeah.
And people didn't know. And so it was just like, well, I don't know.
They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to April. April Leiffer Henry is the owner and founder of Pregnancy and Birth Stories, a company that creates digital content for birth centers, community midwives, lactation consultants, and other health professionals. Since experiencing 3 miscarriages, April views all of her writing work through the lens of loss, holding space for grief and joy, which often collide during the parenting journey. She and her husband, Mike, have 3 living children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. So welcome, April. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh,
so
thanks. Thanks so much. I love how you said in your bio that your work is focused on holding this space for grief and joy. And today we're talking about secondary infertility, which I feel like really encompasses those 2 things, grief and joy, in the motherhood journey. And I think this is a topic that a lot of women either hold close to their hearts, like they don't talk about, or if people experience a friend who says, I'm going through secondary infertility, that friend may not know how to respond. Like, what is that? So I was wondering first, you could define what secondary infertility is, and then tell us your own story.
Sure. So this is probably not like a medical definition, but secondary infertility is when you have one living child and then you want to have a subsequent baby and there are fertility struggles. So it's definitely part of my story. When my husband and I decided that we wanted to have a baby, our first pregnancy was like just very easy. Everything was normal and there were just no complications. And, he was born and I don't know that I would say I had like the perfect birth, but I certainly had a good birth. I had a hospital birth and it was a good experience. And so like I came out of that first pregnancy and birth probably pretty naive, thinking that everything would just happen the way I thought, happen the way that I planned. So when our oldest was about 3 years old, we decided that we were going to try and have another baby. And I had an IUD. We had moved not long before that. So I found a midwifery practice that had like several midwives, which was awesome. That was new to me. And so I made an appointment and I went to see one of the midwives there. And I remember her telling me, now, after you have this removed, you might have some irregularities. And I was kind of like, okay. Like, I didn't really think there would be any issues. And sure enough, she was right. Just horrible bleeding, like irregularities for about 4 months after I had that IUD removed. And, I really wanted to have another baby. And it was like, okay, well, this is not working out. Like my cycles are irregular. I don't know when I'm ovulating. How am I going to get pregnant? And so I called back. They were like, oh, well, yeah, that's normal. We'll just put you on the birth control pill. And I was like, wait. I'm trying to get pregnant. And they're like, oh, well, we know. But if you go on the birth control pill for 3 months, then it'll regulate your hormones and then you can get pregnant. And I thought, well, that was the only option they were offering me. So I thought, well, oh, okay, I guess. So I did that 3 months of the birth control pill. And just like when I got pregnant with my first baby, it was like the next month I was pregnant. And so I thought, okay, whew, like, we got that worked out. And I thought it would just be like the first time. I think I had made an appointment for like 8 weeks. And before that appointment ever happened, I started having some bleeding. And so I had called and they were like, oh, okay, well, it could be nothing, or it could be there's something wrong. And, come in and we'll do an ultrasound and we'll see you. And so the ultrasound tech looked at the scan and said, it looks like you're about 5 weeks. And I was like, no, I'm 7 weeks. And so that was the first indication that something wasn't right. And I was already having a little bit of bleeding. And so they said, well, you already have an appointment scheduled for the following week. So, why don't you just see how things go? Maybe like I said, they said, maybe it's nothing, or, maybe it's something. And then like within the next couple of days, I started having much heavier bleeding. And I knew for sure that I was having a miscarriage. And so I just managed it at home on my own. And then I remember I did go back for that next appointment, even though I wasn't pregnant anymore. But I was devastated. And I remember they gave me what I call like the standard miscarriage pep talk, which is you didn't do anything wrong. You can try again. And so I was pretty hopeful. Like of course I was sad, but I feel like because I was young and healthy, I had youth on my side. And so I was fairly hopeful, but I had all the same like irregularities again. And so it was like coming up on a year that we had been trying to have another baby. And it was just really difficult I had an almost 4-year-old. And so I was constantly getting, well, when are you going to have another baby? When are you going to give him a sibling?
Yeah.
And people didn't know. And so it was just like, well, I don't know. There was a lot of like feeling like a failure in that time. I ended up doing the same thing, 3 more months of birth control. And again, I'm not like advocating for that. But that was the only thing that was being offered to me at the time. And I was so desperate to have another baby that I just said, okay, if that's what you think will work, I will do it. I think I did have like some sort of knowing that maybe there was something wrong, like physiologically, that the hormones in the birth control pill were enough to like band-aid whatever was going on. But I just went ahead and said, okay, that seems like the fastest solution. Okay, 3 more months of the birth control pill. So we did that. And again, like a month after I stopped taking the pill, I got pregnant. And so then I was pregnant after loss. And, I was hoping that I would have this rainbow baby. And a rainbow baby is a baby born after loss. And so, yeah, that pregnancy was normal. Everything was great. We found out we were having a little girl, and I actually kind of think that it's fitting for my daughter because she's just spunky, and she's like, she loves glitter and unicorns and rainbows, and she's just like this colorful spirit. So it kind of fits her. But so I had a boy, and then we found out we were having a girl, and it was like, oh, like the perfect little family, a boy and a girl.
Yeah. Now you're done, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of people probably thought, then we would be done. And we didn't really know. I didn't like have a plan either way, but I knew that I didn't want to like close that door. Like I knew I wanted to leave the option open that we could have another if we wanted to. I'm trying to think, it was probably about the same time frame, like three or 4 years later, we bought a new house and I was like, oh, there's room in this house for another baby. So um, we talked about it and it was like, yeah, I think we're gonna try again. And it took longer. I was not on any sort of hormonal contraception. So I think like that was good for my body. And then once we decided that we wanted to try again, the hormones were not an issue that time. So it took a few months and I got pregnant. And I just remember like, I mean, almost the whole pregnancy, even though I had ultrasounds and heard the baby's heartbeat on the Doppler, like it was almost like I was just in disbelief that it was like everything was working out. But I had a home birth with that baby. And I always say that it was a life-changing experience. And this is crazy. I remember sitting on my bed after he was born, and my husband Mike was on my right, just standing near the bed talking to me. And I was looking at the baby and we were talking, and I looked up at Mike and I said, I want to do it again. And he was like, oh my gosh, April, like it's been like an hour.
You're like, I'm ready. Let's do it.
But from that moment, like it just like cemented that vision in my head that we were going to have 4 kids. But I remember even when I was pregnant with the third baby, people would ask me like, oh, is this going to be your last one? And I was like, I don't know. I was never willing to say, oh yeah, we're going to be done after this one. And I mean, there are many people who have that feeling and are like, yeah, I'm done. But I don't know. I never had that. And so, yeah, I was just completely in love with the idea of home birth. I I often wonder if it was kind of like I have this obsession with birth. It's almost like people who build up weddings in our culture. Like weddings are such this big like production, and then like we don't prepare people for marriage. And so then I thought, oh, am I just like wanting the birth? And do I really want to be a parent again? Or do I really want to be a parent to a 4th child? And so I had to like work through some of that. When our youngest, Vincent, was about 2, then I was like, we're going to have one more, right? And Mike was like, okay, if you want to. And again, it was similar. Like it took a few months, but I did get pregnant in the fall of 2019. And I really wanted to have another home birth. So I had made an appointment to see the home birth midwife around 10 weeks. And I had that appointment. And I remember she was using the Doppler. She had asked, do you want to see if we can find the heartbeat? And I said, sure. She was like, I just want you to know it's about a 50-50 chance that we, will hear the heartbeat. You're about 10 weeks, so we might hear it, we might not. And I don't want you to worry. And I was like, okay. And so she tried and she couldn't find the heartbeat. And I had this like tiny inkling, this like thought in the back of my head. And I thought, oh, maybe I should like ask if they can refer me for an ultrasound, because the home birth midwives don't do ultrasounds, but they could have referred me. And then I was like, no, she says it's normal, that she's not going to find a heartbeat. So it's okay. After that appointment, that was when we were going to like start announcing the pregnancy. And since we didn't get to hear the heartbeat, I thought, okay, well, we better wait. A couple weeks later, I was like 12 and a half weeks. That is when everything came crashing down. I had gone to the bathroom and I saw blood. Ever since my first miscarriage in 2010, I have been like wiping and seeing blood. It's like, that's always a bit of a trigger. And so I remember like I saw that blood and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I texted my midwife and she said that she could see me that day, like later in the day, that she had an opening and she could do a heartbeat check. I went and got on the table and she got out the Doppler and again, couldn't find a heartbeat. And I remember she said, this is not the best Doppler. I have another one in my car. So I'm going to go get that one. And so she did. She went and got that one and she came back and again, tried and there was no heartbeat. And so at that point, I knew that this was not good. And so she said, there were a few options that she could talk to one of her colleagues in a hospital-based midwifery practice and refer me for an ultrasound, which would be the next day. Or I could go to the ER and they could do an ultrasound right away, do blood work, or I could do nothing and just wait and see what happened. And so I said, I'd really like to go get an ultrasound. If you could help me get an ultrasound tomorrow, that would be good. And I think I was like 12 weeks and 5 days or something. The ultrasound tech attempted to do an abdominal ultrasound and couldn't really see much. So I knew that wasn't good. A 12-week, almost 13-week pregnancy should be pretty visible with abdominal ultrasound. And she asked me if I would do the transvaginal. And I said, okay. I was measuring 8 weeks, 6 days. And so that was like the official, moment when I knew that it was over. It's weird because with ultrasound staff, like, I think there's some sort of like policy that they're not really supposed to discuss the results with you, but like they're supposed to wait for the provider to do that. But like, I knew, and she was super compassionate. I remember like I was crying, she was giving me tissues and she hugged me and, she was like, I'm gonna get one of the midwives. I guess it was a similar situation to my first miscarriage in that like they gave me the pep talk, but I was older. It was different in that way. And so my first miscarriage, it just happened naturally. And then, so this, I had to weigh my options. And initially I was just going to try and wait it out. Because I thought, well, I did have that little bit of bleeding, so maybe it'll just happen on its own. But like 4 days went by and like nothing was happening. And so, yeah, I called back, like that was a Friday when I had that ultrasound. And by Monday, nothing happened. So I called back and they ended up calling in the prescription for the medication, but I didn't actually use the medication until the following day, which was Tuesday. So I technically, I don't know. Was I still pregnant then? I don't know, but I was like 13 weeks one day if I, was still counting. And I was in my head, I was very much counting. And so, yeah, I used the medication at home and it actually took 2 doses. I did the first dose early in the day and nothing happened. And so then it says on the bottle, if nothing happens after 4 hours, repeat dosage. So I did. And I actually started to wonder if it was going to work because like more hours were going by. But by like late afternoon, early evening, I could tell that like things were happening, and it's similar to birth. It is birth, but a lot of the sensations are similar. And so, it was like just these waves of cramps. And then, I was like running to the bathroom and yeah, it was awful. And after that, I was devastated. I was depressed and it was such a shock. Like I was 12 weeks. I thought everything was fine. And it was just a huge shock. Then right after that, the pandemic started. And so, it was just, life was, oh, gosh, I just felt like I was in a daze for a long time. I did want to try again. Like I still was holding on to that vision of 4 children.
And the second home birth.
Yes, another home birth. That's right. I don't know what it is about my body, but it's just strange. Like after I had that miscarriage, my cycles were completely messed up again. And I really wanted things to be okay, like naturally. Like I tried some herbal supplements and I was really hoping that like that would help, but it didn't. And perhaps if I had given it more time, it would have, but I felt like I didn't have time on my side this time. And
how old were you at this point?
At that point, I was 39. And so I sought out a reproductive endocrinologist that I had seen before because I found out in 2014 that I had uterine polyps. And that's why I kept having like the irregular bleeding. Like I said, the birth control hormones were enough to cover up those symptoms and to manage it. But the actual like my uterus was still dealing with that. And so I had seen a reproductive endocrinologist at that time in 2014, and he was the one who figured it out. I basically went to him and said, I'm having all these irregular cycles. Everybody else keeps putting me on the birth control pill, and I know that something is wrong. And I'm not leaving here until you figure it out. And he did. I'm forever grateful to him for helping. And so he did, I guess it was a surgery, but it was a minor procedure to remove the polyps. So in 2020, when it was like late summer of 2020, I reached out to his office again and just said, can I come back? I'm having like a lot of the same irregularities. You helped me before, and I want to try and have another baby. And he also does like IUI and IVF. I didn't really want any of that, but I felt like if anyone could help me, it would be him. And so I did. I went to see him again, and he said that the polyps did not return, which I was surprised. I thought maybe that's what it was. But he said no, that my uterus looked fine. At least I didn't have polyps. I think there was some issues with like my endometrium being too thick. And so he had me try a couple different medications and found one that seemed to work. I think I did the medication for like 3 months, and then I got pregnant again in December of 2020. And it was a very different experience because seeing a reproductive endocrinologist is like completely different than seeing a midwife. And so like
Yeah, for real.
you call their office and you're like, I got a positive pregnancy test. And like, can you come in today for blood work? I mean, it is like very different. And, they want to be like right on top of it. And so I was like, oh, right, today? Okay. I had gone and like they did blood work for my HCG, and it was pretty clear something wasn't quite right. My HCG levels were not going up as they should. He did a couple ultrasounds, and it was looking like a blighted ovum, which is when fertilization happens and the embryo attempts to implant into the uterus, and the gestational sac starts to grow, but the embryo doesn't. And so it was just an empty sac. But the body still, like, you still have pregnancy symptoms. I felt pregnant. I was like starting to feel nauseous and like starting to have a lot of the symptoms. So, but anyway, after going for, I think we did 3 ultrasounds. After the second one, my doctor said, this is not a viable pregnancy. And I was like, okay, which, like I said, it was very different. It was like this drawn out situation where we were like pretty sure that it wasn't viable, but I just wanted it so badly that I didn't want to give up. And I remember asking him, I said, can we just wait 1 more week and can you do 1 more scan? He was like, yeah, you can do that. And so and that's what we did. And I wasn't having any bleeding or any cramping. And so, yeah, I went back and he was, he said the same thing. So at that point, I actually asked if he would do a DNC because I just wanted it to be over. And it just seemed like my body was not letting go. And given my history, it's like my body didn't like to let go. And can we just schedule a DNC? And so that's what I ended up doing, which was different for me. I tend to be very like holistic and like try all of the natural things first, but it had just been such a journey that I just thought, I just want this to be over. So I am ending my childbearing journey with a loss, 2 losses in a row, which is not typical. And I already had, I had a rainbow baby 10 years ago. So I've had that experience. And then I had a bonus baby. So my story is kind of different, I guess, but there was a lot of just thinking and like processing, and it was difficult to make a decision. My doctor said to me, like, medically, you can try again. Like after the DNC, he was like, everything looks good. If you want to try again, you can. But something that we hear a lot in the loss community is that miscarriage happens in 1 in 4 known pregnancies. So that's about 25%. But the data on women over 40 the risk of miscarriage is much higher. It's almost double. It's about 50% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage for women in their early 40s, which is me. And so I just thought, I felt like I didn't want to take the chance of another loss. I had been through a lot physically and emotionally. And so for us, the best thing was to say, we're done. And that was a grieving, that's like a separate grieving, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. Separate than grieving the loss of the babies
That's
that
right.
died. It's hard to put a timeline on grief, but like for you, how long do you feel like you were deep in that to the point where you said, okay, I think that I can breathe again. I can look at my life and see a little bit of light on the other end of the struggle. How long do you think that was for you? Or if you're still in it?
After the loss in 2020, I don't know that I can remember like an exact timeline, but I was depressed and I made an appointment with a therapist and I saw her one time in person. Like right after that is when everything shut down.
Mm,
And I probably could have reached out and asked about virtual, but nobody reached out to me. And I was just in such a bad place that I just I didn't reach out to them. So I remember this day, it was maybe a few weeks after the loss in 2020 when the refrigerator was like full of leftovers. And it like desperately needed, like all these leftovers really needed cleaned out. And there were all these little like plastic containers. And I knew it was going to be disgusting. I'd been putting it off for so long. And so I just had this moment where I got motivated to clean out those leftovers and to wash out all those containers
mm,
because there were so many and they were not going to fit in the dishwasher. I just thought I'm going to hand wash these. And I was standing at the kitchen sink and I have a corner sink and there's a window right by the sink. And I was like dumping all of these disgusting leftovers into the trash can and washing out these containers. And the sun was shining in through the window. And I got all the dishes done and they were stacked in the drainer. I just like looked at this pile of clean dishes and I was like, I did it. Like it was a small thing, but it wasn't.
yeah, that's huge. Yeah, especially when you're depressed and you're grieving. That's huge.
But like everyone was struggling at that time. It was like the height of the shutdown. My husband's job was crazy. He works in restaurants, and so his world was being turned upside down because they were closed and he could only do to-go business. Everyone was dealing with so much at that time. And in a way, like we were all commiserating. I mean, we were all dealing with different things, but also it was just such a hard time. And so I did not go back to therapy at that time. And something that really helped me was that I started working out again. Years ago, I had worked out with a group at 5 a.m. And because of the shutdown, the gym that I had gone to went to virtual classes. And I saw, like on Facebook, I saw that the classes were going to be virtual. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can go. Like I can attend these classes because I can just go down to the basement and I'll get to see all the people who I used to work out with. I mean, it had been like 3 years since I worked out with them. And I started doing that. And that was huge for me. That was really big in my healing. But after the loss in 2021, I started seeing a therapist almost right away. And I really wanted to find a therapist who had personal experience with pregnancy loss. And I did. I found one and I still see her. It has been so important for me to have that, and the strategies that she has taught me, it's been really helpful. Probably within a couple of months after the loss in 2021, I would say that I started seeing the light again.
Yeah. I know that the adjusting of expectations of like, I'm going to have a fourth baby, I'm going to have that second home birth, this dream is going to be realized. I'm sure that still hits you sometimes, though. Who do you think you are, like on the other side of maybe a dream that you had to let go of? Like, what are some struggles that you've maybe still experiencing, and what are some strengths that you've gained on this secondary infertility journey that didn't end with another baby in your arms?
So I would say that some struggles. Sometimes I still really struggle with pregnancy announcements, seeing them on social media or just, people telling me. I have some really great friends who have reached out to me before they announce their pregnancies on social media and let me know. And that's a good tip for people. If you are pregnant and you have friends who have encountered loss, it's really nice to give them a heads up. But yeah, that can be difficult for me to see those pregnancy announcements and also birth announcements. It's particularly difficult when I see other people who have a fourth baby. And even just being around families who have four children, sometimes I look at them and it just, there's like a little bit of sadness because I see them with four children and I think that was supposed to be us. But I do think that I have gained a lot of perspective because I went through loss and like I've met other people who have experienced miscarriage or stillbirth or, there are various kinds of pregnancy loss. And one of my friends, we always say it's the worst club with the best members. Yeah. And so like whenever I hear about someone who has a loss, I just like immediately just like want to, do something for them. And I used to struggle with this. I remember one of my friends had told me that she was having a miscarriage and I actually didn't know her that well yet, but I wanted to do something for her. And so I like baked her a loaf of banana bread and I did it and I like wrapped it up and I put it in a gift bag. And I was like, wait a minute, what if someone has a gluten allergy or what if they hate bananas? Like I went through all of these things and I was like, okay, who cares? I'm just going to take her this banana bread and put it on her porch. And I just had to do something. I feel like I have like gained a community in a way. And, I never like want to welcome someone else to this community, but like it happens. And so because it does happen, it's good that like we can be here for each other.
I remember when I had my miscarriage, I became like a co-leader of a grief group and I was still grieving myself, but I was asked to do this and I was like, no, this is something I need and this is something that I want to be a part of women's lives. And the other co-leader was a woman who she had like an 8-year-old child and her story was that she had a hard time getting pregnant again and then she had lost that baby. And I had just had my miscarriage and I was trying to say something like nice to her and I'm like, well, I'm sure you're going to get pregnant again. I was trying to like say something to her and she was just like so gentle and she's like, I have no guarantee. And I just felt that in my gut. I had just like put my foot in my mouth and she was right. Like her experience was correct. Like now her son is a teenager and she has never been able to get pregnant again. And I just gained so much insight from that very brief conversation where I said the wrong thing. And she was kind to me in correcting me and saying, there's no guarantee. Like, we can't offer these platitudes to people who have had loss to say, like, oh, you're going to get pregnant again. Like, you're young. Like, you already have one child. Your body knows what to do. Like, there is no guarantee that somebody who's experiencing infertility or secondary infertility is going to be able to carry a child to term. And I think that's such a hard space for friends and family members to be in because it's so hard to enter into that pain and into the unknown of the woman who is walking that difficult path. And so what do you think that you would tell a woman who has a loved one who is experiencing secondary infertility? What would you tell them? Maybe some things not to say, or maybe some things to do or say that would actually be helpful.
Things not to say would be anything that starts with at least. Like, yeah. At least you already have one baby, or at least, whatever. Nothing that starts with at least is good. I think that, you'll hear people say like, oh, you should just be grateful for what you have. It's a common thing to say for some reason after miscarriage, but we do not say that after other deaths. Like if someone's mom dies, we don't say, well, at least your dad's still alive, or just be thankful your dad's still alive. Or if you lose a sibling, we don't make these comparisons typically when other deaths happen. So, that would be something not to say, like to not compare, one loss with another. Really, the best things to say are just I'm sorry. And this must be so hard. Just validating people's feelings and emotions, because there is no right or wrong way to feel about grief or losing a baby. It's such an individualized experience. So even, I try and be careful, like, I've had 3 miscarriages, but if someone else has a miscarriage, like I hope I don't say, oh, I know how you feel, because I cannot know how another person feels. Like, it's just not possible. And they don't know how I feel. Like, we just can't fully understand someone's experience. I mean, you can certainly say, I had a miscarriage and it was really long. And then just let the grieving person, if they want to respond to that or ask questions, then, that's fine. But I think it's really nice to like do things for people, gift cards, taking them a meal. And I know that can be difficult. Like, I get stuck in my own head about this. Like, oh, should I just drop off a meal, or should I like contact them ahead of time? I don't want to bother them. But, I've done both, where I've like just dropped off something that they can use later, or contact them ahead of time and say, I'm going to make you a meal. Like, not, don't ask, just say, I'm going to make you dinner. Is Monday or Wednesday better?
Yes, that's
And
exactly what
then,
you do. Not, is it okay if I make you dinner? Or would you like me to make you dinner? Don't give them a chance to say no. Just say, like, I'm doing this.
that's right.
And then they can just rest in the fact that I don't have to cook tonight. Or even if they had already put something in the crock pot that morning, like, they can put it in the fridge and have it the next night. Like, it's not a bother to have more food than necessary when you are already exhausted and feeling sad. Yeah, that's my rule too.
And I mean, I had a friend who had a stillbirth recently. And when I found out, I like immediately went to Target and just like bought her like cozy socks and tissues. And like, I don't know, I just like bought the things that I could think of. And I hoped that, would be things that she could use. And I just like put them in a bag and like dropped them on her porch, and then texted her and said, I left you a little care package.
Yeah.
And that's a good tip for someone who is like freshly grieving. If they don't answer the door, or if they don't answer your text, it's okay. Just, you can just let them know that you left something for them. And I think, they'll find it.
Yeah.
Because they might not want to answer the door. That's okay.
Yeah. I think showing up, even if you feel awkward, or even showing up awkwardly, is better than not showing up at all. Because I do remember the people who I thought should have said something when I had my miscarriage and who were absent. Like, I do remember, like, I wish my best friend would have come over. I don't remember her calling or texting. Like, she was very strangely absent from my life. And I remember that. I don't hold any animosity towards her, but I don't think she knew what to say. But I still needed her in my life. So I think that just being somebody who says, I'm thinking about you today, I care about you, I hear you, I put a gift card in an envelope for you. Like, those things really do make a difference, because you do remember the people who show up for you during those difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that folks can do is just check in, like just send like check-in texts or messages every week, or there's no specific timeline, but it's really nice to know that like people didn't forget.
Yeah. I've
Um,
also asked my friends, after they had their miscarriage, I was like, when was your due date? And I actually put it in my calendar, and I'll send them flowers around that date, because that due date is going to be really tough if they miscarried in their first trimester, or even, like, anytime. That due date does not leave your head, no matter what. So I think that's something else that people can do to honor and remember and help the grieving parent through their loss.
yeah, that's an awesome suggestion. I also do that. It's so nice when people remember. And there's this common misconception that people who are grieving, like that they don't want to be, maybe you shouldn't say something because you'll remind them. But that's not true. Like they never forgot. they
Yeah.
they never forgot the due date. They never forgot, even if whether it's a miscarriage or some other type of loss. Like they didn't forget about that person.
I think just being seen in that struggle that can seem so invisible, because miscarriage can feel invisible. And even if you are somebody who experiences secondary infertility where you are not even able to conceive again, but that's a grief that you still carry with you. So not all secondary infertility ends in a loss or ends in the lost story. Sometimes it just ends in I could not ever conceive again. But that is still very palpable grief for somebody who longs to have another child, or they long for their family to grow, but it's not happening for them. So I think just holding that space for that invisible pain, we just want to have that awareness to say people are carrying this with them, and you're not alone if you're experiencing that. Like that's real and it's hard.
Definitely. It's so hard. Thank you for bringing that up. Not everybody even gets pregnant. There are lots of folks who struggle with infertility and don't conceive. It's another reason why I really encourage people not to ask questions. Just don't ask. Don't ask, when are you going to have a baby? Don't ask, when are you going to have another baby? Don't ask those questions, because you just don't know what type of hell people are experiencing.
Yeah. And those questions can be like a knife in the gut. So those are really hard questions. Let the other person bring it up to you if they want to tell you about that part of their life. So I think we've covered so many good things today, April, and I really appreciate you kind of telling us about the most painful parts of your motherhood and this part of your journey. I don't take that lightly. I really want to honor that space that you brought your story into. So thank you so much for sharing that today on the podcast. We are going to transition to our rapid fire questions, which I always am like, it feels like a jolt on these heavy topic podcasts, but I also appreciate like the levity and joy that these questions can bring as a way to end out our time together. So are you ready for these questions?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. Which Disney princess would you like to take out to coffee?
Elsa.
A lot of people say Anna, but I don't think too many people have said Elsa.
Well, I think Elsa is awesome because she's like strong and powerful, but her power is completely misunderstood. And she figures out how to harness that power with the help of her sister, not a man.
Yeah, I like that. Women
I
power.
love her.
Yeah, that's great. Would you rather spend a weekend at a cabin in the woods or in the city with great restaurants?
Oh, the city with great restaurants.
An ordinary moment that brings you great joy.
After we eat dinner as a family, and the rare times when all three kids like linger at the dinner table and just like are happy to talk to us. Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Last show you binged and loved?
Ooh, I don't watch a lot of shows. So I did recently watch Little Fires Everywhere because I read the book. Finally, it had been on my list for years, and I finally read the book, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this show. And I don't know that I loved it. I liked it though. It was good. It's always neat to see a book, in visual form.
Yeah. And compare it to compare the different mediums. Go-to book, fiction or nonfiction?
Ooh, probably fiction.
When you were 5 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Marine biologist.
Were you a dolphin lover or a whale lover or something else?
Both.
Yeah, just all the sea creatures.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to?
I am looking forward to, my youngest is going to pre-K in the fall, and that might sound bad, but I have worked in the evenings for like ever since he was born, basically. And so when he goes to school, I can work a normal schedule on my writing, and then I can, be free in the evenings and not have to like worry about, okay, what work do I have left to get done? So I'm really looking forward to that.
That does not sound bad at all. Grace is also going to 3 morning preschool in the fall. And I'm like, I'm in a house and breathing room where like the house is quiet and I just can be myself and not mom, caregiver, all morning long. So I think that's a good thing to look forward to. All right, last one. Finish this sentence. Motherhood is.
Ooh, brutal. Can I steal that from Glennon Doyle?
Yes.
Beautiful and brutal.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's all the things. So thank you so much. Where can we find you online, April?
Well, my website is pregnancyandbirthstories.com. And there are links there to my Facebook and Instagram. I'm not super active on social media right now, but my Facebook page is just Pregnancy and Birth Stories with April Leiffer Henry. And then my Instagram is Pregnancy and Birth Stories _ALE.
I will definitely share that in the show notes and we can follow you. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time and your story.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.